My two favorite words are impossible and chaos. Impossible for me means something which has never been done before. And if it has never been done before, there is always a first time. And for you as an organization, it is indeed an opportunity to reap the benefits of a first mover advantage, to be the pioneer of being there in the business and create a success out of it. And that could result in supernormal profits. Chaos, for me, also represents an opportunity because I have to make a distinction between chaos and random. Chaos is not random, but chaos means that business rules are essentially changing in a different way. And chaos means also that the new business rules have not yet been defined. And if you, as an organization, are successful in deciphering the new code of those business rules, then you stand also a competitive advantage because you are first in the game of that particular marketplace. And this is typically done through the creation of a new algorithm which identifies and predicts patterns of behavior. What unites these two things really and truly is technology. In today's world, most chaos around organizations is built around technology. You name it, be it IoT, be it AI, be it distributed ledger technology, or augmented reality or virtual reality, or 3D printing. All these technologies are progressively disrupting the business models which we have been used to before. Look at the previous large companies which were listed on the Fortune 500. They used to be property movable companies, financial services companies that focus significantly on capital-intensive industries. But today, when you look at the list has changed completely. We see that at the top spots we find companies like Google, companies like Meta, companies like eBay, all of which have one thing in common: a robust algorithm that is able of reviewing and predicting patterns of behavior. So we can argue that today's modern organization is really and truly a maths organization which is driven by numbers, by data, and acquiring knowledge which is then distributed across the whole organization. And what better way of maximizing this new weapon than using technology? But technology on its own is not a magic wand. Technology needs to have in place other aspects, and that is why we call it digitalization. Digitalization is not about technology. Digitalization is really truly more about the business, the people elements, as opposed to technology. Because technology at the end of the day is just a tool. And this is, in my view, where most organizations get it wrong. Because organizations think that if they can throw money at the most expensive piece of technology, they can actually either get rid of a problem or alternatively come up with a competitive advantage for their company. But that's really not the case. Why? Because technology is a tool that can help you to review your business model and come up with a completely new business model that can change the game within that particular marketplace. My name is David Gallia. I'm a digital transformation coach, and I have been in this space for the past 20 years, coaching and advising companies around the world, specifically on how to implement digital transformation programs. And from my experience, the single biggest failure point of these transformation programs is precisely the human dimension. I speak to many companies, and I find it increasingly obvious that most of these organizations fail to involve stakeholders coming from all perspectives, be it employees, be it shareholders, be it unions, being policymakers, so on and so forth. You cannot achieve success in digital transformation without involving people. Why? Because digitalization is human. It is not about using robots. It is about creating a human environment through using technology, but at the end of the day, the user is a human being. So you cannot create a digitalization program without involving the human being throughout the process. And this is explained precisely through a methodology that I have prepared through my best-selling and award-winning book, which is called Digital Made Simple, which can be purchased from Amazon. But before we go down that route, I would like to explain the growing pains of companies and the problems that they typically face when they try and implement a digital transformation program. And the growing pains can be segmented into 6 main areas. And the most obvious one is operational efficiency. By operational efficiency, I mean that organizations need to focus on the business process and streamline their operations. When they start very small, organizations typically operate through a very informal way. But as they grow, those informal methods need to be standardized, need to be made more efficient, and measures need to be put in place. And in that context, the use of technology and automation becomes even more justified. And we go down the route to the next level, which is scale. Scale is of prime importance because sometimes the business processes within your entity can inhibit your growth. How many times have I spoken to companies, particularly I had one particular case in the construction industry, which was being inundated with requests for work, but it couldn't accommodate those requests because it had constraints in capacity and processing the information required to manage that new form of capacity. So technology can help you not just automating existing processes and make you more productive, thereby doing more with less, but it gives you the right level of intelligence to prioritize on those activities which are most important and vital for the profitability and return on investment of your company. The third area is integration. Typically, companies start by implementing a very simple system, and typically that is, from my experience, the financial management system. So you can find the accounts payables, the accounts receivables, the financial reporting module, where the financial statements are being prepared and the management accounts are prepared. But what you find is that organizations progressively implement and introduce new systems which are siloed and they don't interface together. So, for example, the procurement module does not integrate with the financing module, which results in potential errors and omissions throughout the process. So, one thing I emphasize when undertaking digital transformation programs is that we need to look at end-to-end processes as opposed to functions. The fourth area, which is quite critical, is data, and often we find many issues associated with data. First of all, in some cases, we find legacy systems which have limitations on the type of data that they handle. So it could be systems, especially in the early days, we have DOS-based systems that we had very few data points that were collected, limited use of validation rules, and alternatively also the same data is retained in different places and it has different values. So which data do you typically use? So data migration typically is a very fundamental element of digital transformation, but more importantly, the data validation rules need to be put in place to make sure that the data is accurate. Another point related to data, and this is really becoming much more important today, particularly with respect to GDPR, where we see that data and privacy are of fundamental importance to your employees, to your customers, to your shareholders, to your stakeholders, to government, which means that we need to comply with legislation. The EU has the GDPR. And more recently, if it's the financial services, we are seeing the Operation Resilience Act, the Digital Operation Resilience Act, which is coming into force to make sure that not only data is protected, but it is safeguarded from intrusion from third parties, and you can actually recover the data in an appropriate way for business continuity management and disaster recovery. These are just simple examples that need to be used. Which brings us to an interrelated point, which is risk. Risk from an enterprise point of view looks at the various aspects, and as the company grows, risk increases exponentially in all areas: operation and credit, market. And digitalization gives you the right information. First of all, it builds a discipline and standard processes which minimize risk because you've got a proper routine in place, but it also gives you the right data and information to be able to manage risk in a better way. Last but not least, talk about team alignment, where, as I said earlier, most of the failures in digital programs lie within the human dimension. And aligning the team is a critical element of your digitalization strategy. So what are the benefits of digitalization? I'm just listed very few, but there are many more benefits that you can generate to a digitalization program. Obviously, growth is crucial because through digitalization, you can automate, you can have access to better information, to become more efficient, and therefore you are able to generate higher levels of growth in your organization than through manual systems. Cost reduction is an obvious one, but obviously I need to make a caveat here that cost reduction has to focus on process streamlining and lean management practices and then build on automating those practices. Doing otherwise would mean that you would be automating inefficient processes, thereby making them even more inefficient. Brand development clearly is one area where it has taken off recently, particularly through the proliferation of digital marketing. So it is an area where we can see a lot of work which is being carried out, and building networks, particularly to social media and also today sentiment analysis, where you can create connections and understand consumers in a better way. Knowledge co-creation, particularly following the COVID pandemic, we've seen the development of online remote working tools, but also the use of generative AI, where it can help us to generate new knowledge by interacting the human with the AI application together. And last but not least, it also relates to sustainability, where we can use the technology to identify areas where it would be not just environmentally friendly from a carbon emission level, but also from a social point of view, where we are living in a better way because we are more productive through the use of digital tools, and therefore we can work less hours as needed in the process. So, what would be the right framework for implementing a digital transformation program? In my book, Digital Made Simple, which has won an Axiom Business Book Award, I illustrate a very simple digital transformation framework. And I emphasize the word simple for the simple reason that we are accustomed to look at very complex frameworks which emphasize a lot of detail and a lot of attributes which create a very confusing picture of what we need to do. So what I've done was I've tried to come up with a very simple framework that takes into account only the key elements that are vitally important to make a digital transformation program succeed. And I have assembled this framework based on my 20 years of international experience in digital transformation. And put simply, we can look at 5 main levels. So the first part is digital mindfulness. By digital mindfulness, I mean that the starting point for any program is to clearly understand from where you are starting. And there are 2 levels that you need to take into account. The first level is establishing a baseline. So what we typically do there is we look at what are your critical business processes, we measure their performance with specific KPIs, we look at your organization structure, how the organization is structured, what type of technology tools you are using, and also overall what is your overall strategy. And these in tandem make up the current base of where you're starting from. But we do not stop there. The second element within the mindfulness part is really looking at how your trajectory over the digital maturity is progressing. So we have developed and established what I call a digital transformation maturity framework, which looks at 4 basic areas, 4 basic stages. So you've got an apprentice level, you've got an expert level, you've got a technical level, and you've got an innovator level. And depending upon where you are today on this framework, you can chart your progress for the next stage in the digital transformation maturity process. Because remember, you have to learn how to walk before you can run. Otherwise, you will trip on your own feet. So this is the philosophy that we apply in the digital mindfulness track. The second phase is really about looking into the future of where your digital strategy needs to go. But in my view, the most important element, aside from charting your future, is really having in place the best processes to make the changes that need to be done in the case where your environment changes. Because remember, the environment changes all the time. And as we are advancing in the digital age, the environment is changing at a much, much faster pace. So in my view, although it is good to have a digital strategy, and I do emphasize and advocate the development of a digital strategy, what is more important is to have the right agile process in place to change that strategy swiftly as the environment changes. And in my framework, I go into more detail of how we achieve this. The third area, having identified and envisioned where you want to go as an organization, I typically focus on the governance and digital capabilities. How prepared are you for the change? So it's no use having a vision unless you have the right elements in place in order to make it happen. So in this context, we look at what is your digital management structure, how are you managing, what type of policies and procedures you use, are there any standards and certifications that you have as an organization, and also the level of tools, techniques, and criteria and KPI cookbooks that you use in order to measure and monitor that progress. So this is a very important stage because it sets the scene for the fourth stage, which is balanced leadership. And I do emphasize the word balance. Why? Because we have all heard in most digital transformation initiatives about the 3 main elements, which are business, processes, people, and technology. Yes, fine. Most companies advocate the use of these 3 areas. But what I find the biggest mistakes that have been made is that most companies try to get the best people, the best technology, and the best processes within that context. However, what you need to do, which is even more important, is having the right people, the right processes, and the right technology. Otherwise, you can end up with a team having the best players, but they are not synchronized to play together. So the emphasis on right is more important than best. It's good to have the very good resources, but they have to be managed and synchronized together. Just to give you an example, if your digital strategy is customer effectiveness and customer experience, then the technology has to be developed in a modular basis to enable swift change over time in order to be able to capture the changes to be more in line with the needs of the customer. This obviously comes at a cost for efficiency because modular systems are typically less cost effective than systems which are fully integrated. But each system has its advantages and disadvantages. The last part I want to contend with is that no transformation process is complete without having proper measures in place to make sure that it is carried out in the right way. And this is what I call the vital signs. And this is an area where, in my view, other companies make lots of mistakes. Why? Because they typically create volumes and reams of KPIs that they monitor, only to find that they can only, in practice, manage a few of these. So what I advocate is having between 10 to 13 KPIs, and in my book and also in my methodology, I develop these KPIs, which are most important for organization to monitor on an ongoing basis in order to make your digital transformation process successful. So this is, in a nutshell, the framework. It looks simple, doesn't it? Yes, of course, this is the whole concept of this framework. But although it is very simple, it is not easy to implement in practice. And this is why I believe that you, as a senior leader, cannot go it alone. Remember, more than 80% of digital transformation projects fail. And this is not because of your fault. This is because that the nature of these projects is very risky. Risky in the sense, and the risk is even higher because you are facing this transformation for the first time. And in my view, you are the expert of the organization, but you might lack the necessary experience in leading a digital transformation program. Not because you're not professional, you are a very professional person who is managing an organization. That is your expertise. But having a professional who is an experienced digital transformation coach who has done it several times over will significantly improve your chances of success in this process. My name is David Galia. I am a digital transformation coach. Should you be interested in me helping you or finding out how you can implement and transform your organization using a digitalization route, please feel free to email me on david.galia@davidgalia-galia.com. Thank you very much.